John Wilsey.
Hi, I'm Shane McGalley.
And I'm Dave Keener.
And this is the Hourlings podcast project. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about superheroes. Dave's going to be leading the discussion. Dave, take it away.
All right, so we're going to talk about superheroes. First of all, what's the fascination with superheroes? Marty?
I think that popularity of comics had extrapolated into movies, and I find it very interesting in that I have actually read fewer novels, including superheroes, than I have seen comics in movies.
I'm going to cover that. I think there's some reasons for that, but that'll be coming up. Shay, what's the fascination?
I think superheroes are popular and fascinating because the good versus bad complex is simplified. And I think that's really appealing.
I think you're right about that. I also tend to think that superheroes are modern day mythology. It's good versus evil. The themes are simple. It's usually pretty easy to tell the good guys from the bad guys.
Right.
Okay, so let's address the other question that Marty brought up. How come we see lots of comics and graphic novels, but we don't see as many books? So, Marty, I'll toss it to you first.
Well, I think that one, authors, at least most of the authors I know, have a great aversion to the Mary Sue. And there is no more Mary Sue character than Superman. You know, he can make the earth spin backwards and go back in time, and
that was only one movie, and
yeah, I know.
You should forget about that.
I think that superheroes are limited by books because I think that it could be maybe the readership. I'm sure people have tried it. In fact, there's certain subgenres of science fiction and fantasy that you can kind of talk about as superheroes. I'm currently working on a vampire novel, and this ancient vampire that's in my story is roughly equivalent to a superhero, kind of. So maybe it's not straight up superheroes like in the Marvel universe or whatever, but I don't know.
All right, Shay.
You have to repeat your question because you cut out for me. I'm sorry.
So why do we tend to see superheroes more in like comics and graphic novels and not so much in novels?
Oh, that's easy because of the big bubble that says "POW." That's the big appeal, in my opinion. I think that I think it's an artistic mode, and it's on its own. It's an artistic style, superheroes. That's popular, very similar to, like, we could compare this very easily to anime. Like why is anime so popular? It's not always, you could tell a story in anime in a novel form, right? But it's the art that draws people, or the combination of the art and the story. So I think it's really more about the art.
I'd agree with you a little bit. I think the art definitely adds that visual, wow, Superman is flying through the air, or Spider-Man is swinging through the streets, and wouldn't that be cool if you could do it? And I think it's hard for a book to capture that in quite the same way. But I also think one of the things that people really enjoy about like superhero comics is you can have superhero team-ups, you can have superheroes fighting each other, you can have villains changing sides and teaming up with heroes to fight a bigger threat. But if you want to duplicate that in a novel or in a series of novels, you've got to jump through a lot of hoops and create like an entire universe and all kinds of superheroes. And the only place where I know that that's been done really well is the Wildcard series, edited by George R.R. Martin, which is up to something like 24 volumes or so now. and also includes some graphic novels, and may eventually include the television series. In this one, the premise is that the aliens were tampering with the human genome, and one of their experiments went awry, and a virus was released. So the virus is the cause of all superheroes, which gets rid of all of the separate origin stories that most superhero comics have. And in this series, you have jokers, you have aces, and you have deuces. Aces are people who get like good superhero powers, deuces get minor powers, and jokers get like effects that you wouldn't want. Like maybe they're very strong, but they look like an 800-pound walrus, things of that nature. So wild cards. I only brought a selection, but there's about 24 books in the series. But this is the only example I can think of where superheroes really worked in book form. I've seen like adaptations of Marvel or DC properties, but I don't think they've ever been as popular as the comics or graphic novels.
Well, I would call Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I'd argue that that's a superhero story that was done very well as novels. I mean, it definitely has mythology in it, but you know, nowadays Thor is a superhero, and so you know, I think that I would argue that that's one example, contrary to your argument.
And you could very well be right. I mean, you know, when you start equating gods to like superheroes, you know, we really are in the realm of mythology.
Yeah. Would you consider, there's been a lot of Star Wars novelizations. Would you consider Jedi to be superheroes?
No, I wouldn't.
As portrayed, they don't seem to be superheroes. They've certainly got powers, but they seem to have as many minuses as they do pluses.
And I feel like superheroes, I know we have like leagues of superheroes, you know, that come together, but it seems like an exclusive club, whereas Jedi's, at least for a certain point of the Star Wars story, you know, were something that was pretty available to anyone who wanted to train to become a Jedi, you know.
Well, I think you had to have some.
You had to have talent.
You had to have some aptitude for the Force. After that, they could train you. But
so, anyways, there's a whole class of superheroes that are just like regular dudes that just have lots of money. You know, that's Batman. You know, for instance, that's you know, Tony Stark.
It's Iron Man.
That's the category.
Of course, nobody ever figures out that the billionaire is the one behind the superhero with all the expensive gear.
Well, when is there going to be like Super Prime Man who does, you know, Amazon deliveries, you know, by swinging from buildings during the day, and for some reason him and Jeff Bezos are never in the same room together? I don't know. Like,
well, you never see me and Batman in the same room either.
well,
right.
I'm not saying anything, but you know, it's a true statement.
So, you know, you know, all that being said, it's not like superheroes never make it into novels.
No,
it's just not as prevalent as the amount that they make into the movies.
and I can certainly find a few more examples and stuff. I even have a few more examples in my collection, but they tend to be, you know, 1 or 2 novels, not, you know, extensive series. And I don't really recall them hitting the bestseller list.
Right. You know, my last novel, I had a character in there that was basically a super soldier that was in effect indestructible. I would put him in the category of a superhero. Just don't piss that guy off.
Well, sure. And one of my favorite authors, Stephen Gould, has a book out called Jumper. Now, it's about a kid who, you know, after a certain amount of child abuse, when he's about to be beaten, he ends up jumping to the local library and learning that he has the power to teleport.
Yeah, I read those books. I love those books.
Well, not only are they pretty good, they don't really follow some of the superhero or supervillain motifs, but if you had one power, what would you do with it? And the book does a pretty good job of exploring that. And that seems pretty super heroic to me, just a bit more grounded than the typical comic book about, you know, saving the earth or stopping the supervillain or, you know, stopping the meteor from hitting the earth. This was on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
I think in general, the superhero recipe is a little bit exhausting for a novel. You know, just the very high contrast, good versus evil, the very centralized focus on a superhero. It lends itself a lot better to episodic storytelling, where, you know, a new villain can arise every time. You know, the city can go back to normal, and then something else happens. And so I think that that might be another reason why we don't see superheroes in novels so much, because you have to follow a story arc and have, you know, development and side plots and all that, when really, again, the simplification, the PAL, the good versus evil, is just much done. It seems to be much more inclined towards smaller segments, like episodes, like comic books. I don't know, that's just my thought.
Also, I think you can, between comic books and movies, I think you can sort of use, you know, visually move people past certain questions about how the universe works and keep them engrossed in the action, right? And I think that's important. As soon as you get to the novel, you're doing a lot more description. You're describing how the world works. And really, if you have Iron Man and Thor and Superman and the Hulk and all of these folks running around, how does that affect the world? How did that affect, you know, World War II? How did that affect the Vietnam War? How does having superheroes really change things? And most of the comics sort of gloss over that. The world just automatically returns back to normal.
Right. Yeah, it definitely frees yourself of the consequence of a conclusion.
And I think that's harder to escape in a novel, where you've got
Agreed.
to fill 100,000 words.
Right.
I think that comic book readers have a higher threshold of willing suspension of disbelief too.
Sure, yeah.
I firmly believe that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's also, yes, and I think it's also sort of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's all in fun. Let's just see where this goes.
Yeah, it's all in fun.
Right.
The guy's made out of swamp, so he's a superhero now.
It's like watching wrestling. You know that it's fake. You accept the fact that it's theatrical, and you just like, I'm going to sit here and have fun.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's kind of like that, but on the page or on the screen. It's just a little harder to capture that in 100,000 words of text.
I think another characteristic of superhero storytelling, at least from what I've observed in modern times, I'm not as familiar with, like, you know, Stan Lee's original stories, but, you know, as someone who watches Guardians of the Galaxy and other ones Marvel and DC are putting out, they're very good at modernizing, borrowing from pop culture in their storytelling. You know, like using pop songs or making references, just very hip, and that fast pace would not lend itself well to novels. You know, being able to put a movie out every 2 years in a series, and have the latest song in the top 20, you know, it's something that you can't accomplish with novel writing, which is slower. By the time you publish a novel that you wrote 2 years ago, it's not fresh, and, you know, the dialogue is not fresh. I know this as a YA author. Even, you know, you write something that kids say nowadays, by the time it's out from the publisher, they're not saying that stuff anymore. You know, so it's just one of those things, I think.
All right. So I don't know. I'm going to toss it out. You guys have another question? I think I just went blank.
I think that a superhero novel could actually be fun to write, but take it from a you know, a new original angle, because comic books have pretty much covered all of the cliche, you know, plot threads that superheroes could get through. And I think it'd be really interesting to, you know, actually write a superhero novel about a superhero and detail what they're really like, flaws and all. And you know, if a superhero has a super flaw, I mean, more than just like, oh, he, you know, will die around kryptonite. I don't mean that like a flaw. More like, you guys watch The Boys on Netflix? Is it Netflix or Prime?
It's on Prime. I have. Not quite sure it's my favorite, but
Yeah, that's a whole new take on superheroes that aren't so super. But a novel, you know, a novel like that, you know, could roll. Maybe.
there was also a movie called Chronicle, where
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I like that.
it was a good film. A couple teenagers, several teenagers gained superpowers from an alien artifact that they touched, but it turned out to like magnify their own flaws.
Yeah.
And it did not go well for all of them. The movie's definitely worth seeing.
Yeah, that was a really good indie film. I liked it a lot.
I think if there's one thing that's old, and tired, I think it's the old origin story. Like I really don't want to see another spider bite.
Yeah, I am. So that's what's really gotten me over a whole bunch of the superhero movies lately. I've got like superhero fatigue. It seems like there's been so many of them. And
Spider bite, gamma rays, cosmic radiation.
yeah, and the weird thing is about the recent ones is they've got so many superheroes in every movie. There's just like, it's just too much. You know, they only get like 5 minutes screen time for all of each of the individual superheroes. It's like, have the smaller stories or something.
Those movies just make so much money that they're always trying to think of a new way, you know, to get people back into the box office, because they're just such heavy hitters, especially during the summer. So you're going to keep seeing that.
Yep.
But I still recommend Wild Cards. Wild Cards was actually done as an anthology series, but they were very tightly plotted. And so there are, what they captured was sort of some of the madcap energy of the comics, with all kinds of different superheroes, with all kinds of different powers, and many powers that were non-standard from the comic books, all bouncing off of each other and basically changing the world. And so I think Wild Cards was very well done. So if you're looking for superheroes in prose form, that's a good place to start.
So before we close up, let's go around the room. If you could have any one superpower, what would it be? Dave, go.
Teleport. I'd like to be able to just teleport anywhere.
I could dig that. Shay, what about you?
Immortality.
Ooh, can I change my mind?
You can. It's, you know, we've got no rules here.
I mean, I'd like to achieve immortality through my writing, but I'd much rather achieve it through not dying.
Yeah, both of those are good.
You know, there was a great quote of gosh, it was, I forget who it was. It was one of the old filmmakers. It might be Woody Allen or something. He said,
that was Woody Allen.
He said, "I don't want to live on in people's hearts. I want to live on in my living room."
Woody,
so
the quote that I gave actually came from Woody Allen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm with Dave. Teleporting, either that or flying.
Hey, before we close up, for what it's worth, my favorite superhero movie for its storytelling and characterization is the animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's fantastic.
That was a good movie.
Good. I enjoyed that.
For your story.
And I like that because it narrowed the universe down to just Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and it was fun. It was original too. I like that a lot. Yeah,
no, I thought they did a good job with it. I also liked all the different animation styles that they used. So it was rather a masterpiece of animation.
Pretty sweet. Okay.
But you didn't say your superpower.
Oh, I said teleporting or
Oh,
flying.
you did too. Okay. All
I
right,
snuck in a second one.
Right. Okay.
But I'd take immortality too, because then I could fly. I, just wouldn't die.
If I'm gonna be
What else?
immortal, I'd rather be immortal with the three of you. So take it up as well.
All right. So that's it for superheroes. I think that we're done for the night. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you again next week.
Stay super.
Okay.